Hamlet's second secret. Alex let out his held breath and grinned shakily. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same question. Sam had stood tall, a dozen feet away. A dark look on his face. Did I scare you? You sure jumped a mile. Gee, Sam, why'd you have to do that? Alex straightened up and dusted off his pajamas, scowling. I made a little noise first, but you had your nose pressed on the glass. I wasn't sure you'd have heard a tank even if it rolled right past you. So haven't you been here before? Well, I've seen a hallway for a few weeks, he said. Remember the first time you seen it? On the day of the governor's inspection? But there are always people wandering around, so I haven't had a chance to go down until tonight. It's better during the daytime, Sam said. Why? Because you can still see Quill better. You what? And Salmon continues. Sometimes the glass barrier's down. So you've gone in there, and what do you mean you can still Quill better through that window? No, not the window, and yes, I've been there. Well, only twice. But those blackboards, which I'm guessing is what you're staring at, are real-life pictures of Quill. Live? Alex fluttered. You know, there's like a picture of what's happening in Quill right now. Sort of like if you're looking out the window and seeing it. How do you know? Sam had looked smug. I've seen things, he said. The high priest Justin, the governors, the quiltary making armor and weapons, and he stopped short and pressed his lips together. And what? Nothing, never mind. Just people walking around the fields, the nursery, a few government buildings, the palace, that sort. Alex turned around and peered into Mr. Today's office again. Are you joking? Listen, Stowy, I'm getting tired of you not believing a word I tell you. It's very irritating. Well, Alex said, you haven't actually exactly been very trustworthy, have you? But he was not in the mood to fight, and since Sam had ignored it, he turned his face back to the glass. It grew foggier under Alex's breath. Have you seen your parents or anything? Alex's voice sounded light, like he probably wasn't asking what Sam had knew he was asking, but both of them, the room, knew better, though neither would say it. I only been close enough twice to see anything at all, Sam had said, as if that explained it. Alex didn't quite dare to ask again. Sam had glanced over his shoulder. What are you doing up this lately? Anyway, I had a nightmare, Alex said, his face flushing guiltily now, because this was the second time he thought of Aaron in 2 minutes. Got some milk and a snack, finally decided to give this holiday a try, and he trailed off. What about you? Now it was Sam's turn to blush. My door won't let me in. I was just on my way down to the dining room so I could take the tube when I saw you. Alex nodded. What did you say to it this time? I told it to stop being so stupid cheerful all the time because it was driving me insane. That would do it, Alex said. I suppose you could use my tube. Thanks. Two boys walked back towards the balcony, hushing their voices as they neared it, peeked around the corners, being very careful no part of their body showed until there were quite no one around. And then, together, they stepped out of the hallway. By the way, I always wonder, Sam had said, what's actually on the wall where the secret hallway is? It's a gigantic mirror, Alex said, remembering. Well, that makes sense. They continued down the boys' hall. One day, when I was standing in the balcony waiting for Lani, she came out immediately and told me I had ink on my lip. I said, where? And she looked at me like I was stupid and pointing at the secret hallway and said, well, just look at the mirror, you dolt. Alex looked quietly. So then what? I looked at the clock and said, "We're late!" Alex, his door sang out an overly cheerful greeting as they approached. Sam had rolled his eyes but his tongue as the door swung open. He looked at Alex's room for a moment and before sliding into the tube. "Hey Alex, if you want to check out the..." He glanced sideways at Sylvie. "Things tomorrow's a good day for lunchtime." Alex nodded, "Thanks. But don't get your hopes up, Alex." Sam had narrowed his eyes, studying Alex's face for a moment, and then he disappeared. Alex soon, looking at the empty space where Sam had been. "It's too late for that," he said. It was rare to see Lani without a book these days. She always seemed to be reading, whether a meals or walking across the lawn through the mansion. And while she usually didn't bump into things while she was walking, it happened as she left the girls' hallway on and walking. It happened that as she left the girls' hallway on her way to breakfast, someone sort of popped out of nowhere in front of her and ran right into him. The book flew out of her hands and sailed over the balcony railing, causing quite a stir down below. "Hey, watch it, shrimp!" It was Will Blair. Lani stumbled to her feet and peered over the railing. "Sorry," she called out to the pedestrian down below, but those assaulted by the book had moved on by now. She turned back to Will, her eyes burning. "Why do you have to be so rude?" Will was a worry boy of 16, snarled, "Why do you have to be such a priss?" Lani flounced down the stairs in a huff. When she got to the bottom, she couldn't help but look over her shoulder to see if Will was following her, but in the stream of humans and creatures all heading down the stairs for breakfast, he had disappeared. Lani rolled her eyes and picked up her book, which someone had kindly set on the hallway table to keep it from being trampled, opened it up, and began reading again as she made her way to the dining room and joined the others at the usual table. "You're late this morning," Megan remarked as Lani sat down next to Sam, and both Sam and Alex were barely eyed from their nightmarish day. And they ate in silence, but Megan was bright as ever. "That Will Blair," Lani grumbled, "knocked me down and blamed it on me." "Were you reading?" Megan asked. "Well, yes, but he came out of nowhere and I ran right into him." Sam had paused his chewing and looked at Lani, swallowed, and said, "What do you mean? He came out of nowhere? Were you standing in front of the boys' hallway or something?" "Well, that would be a stupid place to stand, wouldn't it? Don't you think I know better than that?" Lani rolled her eyes and grabbed a jelly-filled pastry from the basket at the center of the table. "One never knows with you," Sam said. Not very nicely he looked at Alex, but Alex appeared to be lost in his own thoughts and not paying attention. Lani's eyes flared, but she held her tongue. She was still stung a little from Simber's whirlwind astonishment in the dining room several weeks before. Megan looked around. "Where is he? I don't see him." "He never came down the stairs," Lani said, her mouth full of spicery. "He's not as bad as you think," Sam said. "He's just acting." Both girls sounded raciously at that, bringing Alex out of his trance. What?" Alex said. He checked the clock on the wall and down around the desk of his book in one tremendous gulp. "Oh, never mind," Lani said. She finished her pastry, wiped her mouth on her napkin, and pushed her chair back. "Let's go." The team water classes had extended to 2 hours each morning and afternoon on the lawn. Each day it seemed more and more adult unwanted and mansion creatures sat in, some to brush up their fighting skills and other to observe curiously what sort of magical items the new unwanteds were creating. Today, Florence had them all sit on the lawn, since the first part of their class was to be a lecture. 4 friends sat in two of two, and they whispered together in the little square about the new magical item they brought. When everyone was seated, clear morning came forward. For our lecture today, Florence boomed, we have Mr. Miss Morning. While the audience applauded politely, Megan cheered wildly for the musical Miss Morning was Megan's favorite instructor. Alex leaned over to Sam. If we get an hour worth of music lessons, I think my head is gonna explode. In that case, bring on the music, Sam muttered. Alex squalled to hide his thing. Whatever, he couldn't figure Sam out. Lanny shushed them both with pokes on their ribs as Miss Morning began to speak. For the next 4 days, we will be working on defensive skills, she said. Defensive skills are crucial to our time minions, for if we are at war, we will be fighting against people with weapons very different from ours. Sam grew somber, and he remembered how he'd been expert with the weapons of Quill by now. He jabbed Alex with his elbow and whispered, "Defense? We need to learn how to fight to kill. It's the only way we're gonna win against the Quilitary." Alex followed his brows. "I don't know about that," Miss Morning continued. "Who can give me an example of a defensive skill?" She looked around at the group of students. "Gentlemen," she said pointedly to Alex and Sam, who were still whispering. "You guys got caught," Lanny whispered merrily. "And Lanny," Miss Morning added. "The three of you come up to the front, please." Alex and Sam sniggered at Lanny's look of surprise as they went up to join the instructor. "Lanny, you'll be the enemy standing back where you were with your weapons. No magic from you, all right?" Lanny nodded and pretended to hold a weapon. Miss Morning turned to the boys, who were both a bit red-faced, being at the center of attention. "At my command, Lanny will charge at you. You should have a variety of options in mind already about what to do. But remember, right now we are simply doing defensive skills, so please do not attack her with a magical item." "Any questions?" "Yeah," Alex said. "What sort of weapons does a Quilitary have, actually?" "Excellent question. Who has the answer?" "Knives," Shamet said. "Shields, too. Pieces of wood. Rusty metal," laughed someone. "Ooh, and slingshots," someone else hooted. "Sticks and stones and insults," said another. Some of the art minions didn't laugh at the last one. "Guns," Lanny said. The word rang out. Crowd was still. "Yes, some guns," Miss Morning said seriously. "Though they're not terribly powerful. They can pack a punch. Most of them are BB or pellet guns," Lanny said, with an air of authority that some might have questioned. "That could possibly kill birds, rabbit keys, even small beef pops. But the governors all have handguns. Those are deadly to humans and large creatures." After a long silent pause while the crowd looked at one another, Miss Morning nodded. "Thank you, Miss Haluki." She turned back to face the three. "Ready?" Alex and Sam had been staring at Lanny, not having known about the governor's weapons, but now they both had snapped their attention back to Miss Morning. Lanny faced her opponent, and the three of them nodded together. "Ready? Go!" Lanny charged toward the boys as Alex immediately whipped a paintbrush from his pocket and waved in front of himself, while Sam had whispered a chant. In a matter of seconds, Alex painted him invisible, and Sam had jumped in the air and hang suspended, and then shot off like lightning towards the jungle. Lanny stopped short, aimed an imaginary pistol at Sam's head, and whispered, "Bam!" She turned, wondering if she still had the chance to fight Alex. The audience murmured while Lanny studied the lush grass in front of her. She stalked 5 paces, feeling a bit silly now, having no idea which direction might be correct. Then she saw 2 dents in the grass. She charged forward, the dents moved, and then she reached out and grabbed an invisible something. But it got loose, and Lanny could hear Alex crackling as he heard the hard footpad leaving her no more clues to his whereabouts. She shrugged up Miss Morning. I guess I give up, she said with a half grin. The audience roared in applause as the demonstrator, as Sam had returned with a gallop, Lanny clapping too, until she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned and didn't see anyone. You were great, Alex whispered in his ear. Her hair smelled like mangoes. She squished her shoulder, not really knowing why, other than the lines of the cost, or the fear of guns, or the amazing feeling of being invisible in front of all these people, or perhaps it was a contrast of her bright blue eyes and her shiny black hair. But Alex, feeling suddenly quite darling, pulled Lanny a bit closer and pressed her lips together with a smooth cheek. Lanny froze. What are you doing? Alex chuckled softly, and the audience began looking for him. Gotta go, he said. Lanny blushed furiously as she felt Alex's hand leave her shoulder. She turned around her back so the crowd and pretended to look for him. But all she could think of was that boy with the kind brown eyes that she met on the coal bus. The boy she pelted with spells trying to get attention. The boy who rarely noticed her whenever Megan was around. The boy who had just kissed her right on the cheek. A moment later, as the crowd's applause died down and the Samhead had gone back to his seat, the sound of an aerosol spray could be heard. Soon Alex had now sprayed him with visible spray and was full view again. He started back to his place next to Samhead, a goofy little grin on his lips as the audience clapped once again. He glanced sidelong at Lanny, giving her a sly wink as he sat back down. Lanny's face grew hot again. He turned her attention to Miss Morning and trying very hard to resist touching the warm spot on her cheek, pretending quite convincingly to be enraptured by the rest of the demonstration and lessons. A glimpse of Quill. At the end of class, whose mind was now occupied with things other than Lanny, slipped away from the others and headed to lunch. He bounded up the marble staircase and stepped cautiously into the secret hallway, making sure no one was around, and he crept down the hall towards Mr. Today's office, knowing that the mage always had lunch with the students on Tuesdays. When he got to the place the glass wall had been, he put his hand down, determined not to run into it again, but he inched forward. It became apparently the wall was not in place. There's a bonus, Alex whispered under his breath. He slipped into his office, his ears turned for any noise, and stared at the row of blackboards on the wall. 3 on the left showed various parts of our time flashing from one scene to another every 10 seconds or so. Alex waited until he saw the dining room and noted that Mr. Today was walking around cheerfully, stopping and chatting at each table. The 6 remaining whiteboards showed views of Quill. Alex was horrified by how gray and desolate it looked. It was so much worse than he remembered. He watched each blackboard integrated. One blackboard showed repeating views of the 4 quadrants where all houses and farms stood. He strained to pick out his parents' house from the vast expanse of rows and columns, but the picture changed too quickly for him to even come close to finding it. He moved out on and watched the military grounds for a moment. The soldiers and officers walked about machinery, their faces expressionless. Some of them worked on tanks and others on vehicles, and others toiled windowless rooms filled with sheets of rusty metal and few cutting tools. Still, other pantry poured liquid from a dented tin pail to a vehicle's engine, careful not to spill a precious drop. On the last 2 blackboards were flashing shots of government buildings and the high palace of a high priest just behind. Alex's heart fluttered as he recognized the university grounds on one of the blackboards. As he waited for the scene to change, hoping he'd catch a glimpse of Aaron, just to see him once, he thought, just to know he's okay. While he saw many university students sitting leisurely at lunch, he didn't see his brother. Disappointed, he turned to the palace and was slitted the eyes, and scenes showed a governess in a small meeting room. It flashed a high priest herself alone in her office. Alex scowled and turned back to the university blackboard, which now flashed the cafeteria to an empty dormitory room to a classroom. Alex shook his head sadly. No, not only did the scenes of cold depression, they also made him feel like he was so close to seeing Aaron, which made the results more disappointing. Just as he knew he was about to turn and go for lunch, he took one last look at the university blackboard, and there, in the once empty dormitory room, was a dark-haired boy just entering. Alex's heart leaped. Was it him? Turned and looked this way. He pleaded silently, but he knew inwardly whether it was the boy slipped his jacket off, or the way he smoothed his military haircut just so that it was Aaron. Alex tugged nervously his shirt collar, and he watched his brother turn and hang up his jacket almost as he was reaching right through the wall to Alex. He touched his shaking fingers at the blackboard and gazed at Aaron. So serious, Alex whispered. And as the scene filled the cafeteria again, Alex snapped his head and glanced nervously at the clock, knowing he needed to get out of there before Mr. Today showed up. But he couldn't go. 20 seconds later, the dormitory room scene returned, and now Aaron lay stretched on his cot, staring at the ceiling, hands folded behind his head. To anyone else, Aaron's face might appear expressionless, but to Alex, Aaron's face looked like a troubled sea. When the scene changed again, Alex forced himself to go, leaving a little piece of himself there with his brother. He wandered down to the dining room, completely precious that thoughts of Aaron. Why him? Why was Mr. Today watching Aaron's room of all places? Could it possibly be a coincidence? Alex didn't realize he walked right past Miss Octava, who was called out a greeting, and he didn't even notice Lanny stealing his glances away, her black eyes glowing more hurt each time the moment he didn't acknowledge her. He also didn't see Mr. Today watching him closely, a look of grave concern on the man's face. Alex moved about quite unaware for anyone of the rest of the day. The only thing that he was painful aware of, the single question pounded rhythmically in his head. How? This is the end of this video. Bye!